Alrighty, welcome people. Thanks for your patience and joining in. It is of course 9:10 a.m. on Tuesday. Hopefully you've had a good rest where you are, and we're going to go through something which you can sit back and enjoy. Some interesting moments and examples to work with. I had a chance to look at your submissions yesterday for your source analysis practice, and some really good ones. Looked at the Dinas, Paulas, the Henrys. And it was actually pretty good. So there's some nice data responses. Some were perhaps a little skinny. So what I want to do today is to help you for the rest of the assignment which you're working on this week. I thought I'd do a second stream where I explain each one in a bit more detail, work through a few more examples. So there are a few focal points which I think a few people missed, and hopefully what I will show you will give you more insight as to what I'm looking for. So hopefully you have the thing up on your screen. If not, you follow my screen and just listen along. And hopefully this should work well for you. So there are a few things which we're going to go through, and Henry is here too. That's good. If you're here, you're meant to be on Meet, by the way. But if you're here, just type Foxtrot in chat if you're here or on the YouTube live stream, so that way I don't miss you on the roll call. But we should be pretty good. All right, so. What we're going to do is we're going to flip over to my other screen, as we do, as streamers do, and we're going to have a look at our presentation. So there'll be a few more examples which are a bit more diverse in terms of our propaganda, and hopefully this will make more sense to you as we go along. So our learning goal today is to understand the elements of a propaganda poster and how to analyze them cohesively. And the key word here is the word cohesive. It's not just writing a few dot points and then saying, "Sir, I've analyzed it." You will have to construct especially for the last question in that assessment, you have to put everything you've analyze in that particular poster and construct a thesis or a theory. So if I present you with the poster, you should be able to explain what is on it and how it works. Not just describe, hey, this poster shows someone, but actually talk through why and what happens. Oh, here was that. We'll get you marked off. Johnson's here. And Ben has his microphone on, of course. Ben, shut up. Okay, so I'll get this marked off. All right. So let's have a bit of a look as to what we need to do. So if it's lagging, let me know, because I've got the latency on very high, on low at the moment. So if it's lagging, do let me know. Hopefully it should be okay for you. So let's flick through. So like we said last time, there are three aspects of a source analysis to think about: context, content, and consequence. So tell me what is happening at the time. This is historical knowledge. So we've spent the last term looking at the events of World War II. So you need to be able to go back to your references, your resources. If you know a source was made in 1936, what was happening in 1936. We had a conversation with Ben last time where I was really picking his brain about what happened in 1936, and Ben's like, World War One happened. It's like, no, Ben. No. So you need to remember when things happen. I know this is quite challenging to record dates when you weren't there, but we spent the last term assembling multiple timelines. So that way you should have some idea of what happened in which country, in what time period. We know that World War II started in 1939. We know it ended in 1945, and we should know some major events. So when you look at when things happen, it will make a bit more sense. You need to describe the content of the poster, so what it includes, and finally what the message is, that is the consequence. So we'll start with context. I chose this specifically for Christian, for obvious reasons. So, like we just said before, context means you need to understand what is happening at that time, because some posters make no sense. It makes no sense if you don't know what's happening at this time. I've chosen this particular poster because we didn't really cover this so much in class. This is a very important part of the timeline, but we didn't specifically cover the Philippines. So if you don't understand what this poster is or when it was made, it's really hard to decide what it's trying to tell us. So let's examine this poster together. So obviously you can see the obvious things. You have a Filipino person holding a grenade, it seems, in his right hand, and it says the fighting Filipinos, and we will always fight for freedom. Now, if that's your analysis, that's all you say, that's not a very good analysis. You really have to emphasize more on the elements of the person, not just what it is. I can see it is all that. You need to tell me a bit more than that. So, to provide context, now I didn't expect you to know this, so I'll provide the context, but the things I will give you, you should be able to know what is happening and why. So, in this particular case, for those who don't know, what was happening with the Philippines was that the Philippines is what was an American protectorate. Okay, so the history of the Philippines is interesting. Long story short, there were indigenous Filipinos, and then the Spanish conquered them, and then the Americans took over, and then the Japanese took over, and then went back to the Philippines. So at this time, it was actually under American control. So the Philippines was an American territory, to say the least. So when World War II broke out and Japan invaded other countries, Korea, China, Southeast Asia, so Vietnam, Cambodia, and all that, the Philippines is one of the first countries to form. So because it belonged to America, then it was important for Japan to invade it. So the Philippines was occupied by Japan, and that's what's happening during World War II. So, and that answers the first two questions. The Philippines was owned by America and then invaded by Japan. So, who were the Filipinos fighting? The Japanese. Why were they fighting? For their freedom. That's what the poster says. But that's, we know in this time frame, this is prior to like 1941. So 1941, 1942, the Philippines fell to the Japanese. So that's where the resistance started to appear. So the Filipino people were trying to fight for the freedom against the Japanese. So that's the context. The final question is a point I want to remind you of because the language of the poster is important. I think somewhere in the last activity actually had a thing where I think we were talking about the loose lips sink ships one, where there were people who said that it was meant to be for Germans because you saw Hitler, who is obviously German, listening into a conversation by an American soldier. So they were. I think they mentioned that because it has Hitler, therefore it must be a German source. But the poster is in English. Why would a German poster be in English? And you can probably imagine that if you're going to put a poster to warn Germans to shut up, it would be in German, not in English, because Germans don't read English. And nowadays it's a bit different, but back then, obviously German. So you need to, like, the language of the poster is a huge clue. Now with English, it could be any country. It could be Canada, it could be England, it could be Australia, but there are other clues. But in this case, we know it's Filipino. So why is it in English? Think for a moment. All right, I want you to type in chat why you think this poster is in English when it's a poster for the Philippines. Give you a moment to think about that. Type in chat. All right, I like how like one person responded there, so not bad, not bad. Okay, so yeah, the answer of course is yes, it is the Americans colonizing Japan. So not colonizing, but occupying, protecting Japan. Not Japan, to the Philippines. So that's the general idea. So because it is during the time when the Americans were occupying the Philippines, it kind of makes sense the language being used is English. Now, it's not Tagalog, it's not Spanish, it's English. So we can establish a time frame of this poster because of when it was made, as well as what language it is in. Now, here's also another poster we're looking at. So this is, you might be surprised, I've completely forgot about this, but Dr. Seuss was active during this time. So when we think about, all these things, we forget that people who we assume and we take for granted were around. So Dr. Seuss, who you probably know from The Cat in the Hat, The Lorax, and other famous pieces, was creating cartoons at this time. So this is 1941, after World War II began, but it's referring to events back in 1939 and before that. So we see multiple heads of some kind of monster, and we have a person in the middle with the word the appeaser. And the caption is, remember, one more lollipop and then you all go home. Spend a moment to think about what this represents. Who are these monsters meant to be, and who is this person? The monsters, as you can see by the numerous swastika, represent Nazis, so Germany at this time. And the fact that it's showing monsters gives them, they are the evil beast. And the appeaser, who's wearing a British suit, I guess, or tuxedo, represents the Allies or the British. So the context here, even though the year is a bit off, but we know the context here is that prior to 1939, the Germans under Hitler were occupying different countries. They occupied Austria, they occupied Czechoslovakia. So the idea was that with each territory, France and Britain would allow Hitler to take more land, hoping perhaps that Hitler wouldn't take any more. So we know from before, appeasement is when they're trying to please Hitler. They're trying to avoid war. So the idea of giving lollipops to monsters, this is the message here too. We're going a bit ahead of ourselves, but the idea of giving lollipops to monsters tells us that there's a bit of naivety. There's a bit of naivety, and hopefully they'll go away, but clearly they won't. But we know what was happening at this time. If you didn't know about appeasement, then you wouldn't really understand what this is trying to tell us. So that is something to keep in mind there, is if you know the events at this time, this makes sense. You've learned this, you could probably figure it on your own without me telling you. But hopefully that makes more sense to you. In this case, this is a poster. You can see Avenge Pearl Harbor. And in this particular case, you can probably again know what year this was made. Now, if I said this poster was made in 1940, that wouldn't make any sense because Pearl Harbor was bombed in 1941. So we know at the time frame of this poster. You have to know what Pearl Harbor is. So you're trying to explain Avenge Pearl Harbor. Why are they avenging Pearl Harbor? Who is avenging what? And by knowing the historical background, talking about it, you would say something like how, because in 1941, the Japanese attacked the Americans at Pearl Harbor, America was pulled into a state of war, and therefore they felt betrayed by Japan. And the message of the poster is to use the disaster of Pearl Harbor to motivate the people of America to join up, to work in the factories, to fight in the army, to fight against Japan. So you need to combine that historical background with the analysis. So if you know these events, it makes it a lot easier. And most of the posters will either reference an event or talk about something happening at that time. Think about the whole war, not just battles, but also what's happening at home. Okay. So next up, let's just go through a few things here. Content is next. So we're going to look at the elements of the poster for content. So we have context, which is what was happening at the time, and we have content, so what is in the poster. Now, again, we're normally quite good at literally telling what is there. Look, there's a Japanese guy, there's Australia, and there are words. That's a starting point. So we need to be a bit more sophisticated and a bit more methodical in going through different elements of the poster. So I recommend when you go through content, you go through the following things. You have the graphics and the visuals. You look at symbolism. You look at caricatures. Now, this is something very important which nobody really mentioned, but we talked about it a few times. So remember, most of the people drawn in these posters are drawn intentionally badly, or they're meant to exaggerate certain things. We talked about in German propaganda how Jews were drawn with big noses, and we talk about other countries. Each person is drawn in a certain way. Maybe big ears, big noses, small eyes, big teeth. Something which makes the focus of the subject a little different. Think about the text, as well as the language it's in, the color that is used. So certain colors evoke certain emotions, and think about the focus. So where are your eyes drawn towards? If you look at this poster, there are quite a few things happening. But let's talk about focus. Where are your eyes drawn? Think about all the things in this poster. Where do your eyes look at? I'll give you a moment. Type in chat right now. Where do you think your eyes will focus on by looking at this poster? All right, that's a short moment. We'll keep moving on. So with the eyes focused, the reason why I'll say that it's focused on your words. Okay, the reason why is everything points to it. The eyes of the Japanese soldier are looking down towards Australia. The direction the hand and ears are pointing is down towards Australia, and we see these lightning bolts, or what I see are like radio waves or some kind of signal, all point towards Australia, and particular words, your words. And this is a crucial element of graphic design. For those who are doing graphic design or art, if you're designing posters or advertisements, you have to pay attention to all these elements. Those who are doing like billboards or thumbnails and YouTube videos, the construction, the physical placement of things means you look at things in a certain way. Most people look at the top corner and then look down towards where things are pointing. So all these elements focus on your words are his weapons. So the question therefore becomes, why is this so important? You're also going to discover, of course, Australia being the silhouette in the background, as well as the Japanese soldier looking kind of evil and big nose, obviously exaggerated, and we can interpret this a bit later too. But all these things focus on the scariest part of the message, which is your words are his weapons. We'll go more on that a bit later. Now, the next one, again, this is a little harder because I don't expect people to know exactly the background for this. That's why I'm choosing harder ones. So you're not going to be too overwhelmed with this. So this particular poster, again, describing what's on it. Okay, so we see the immediate obvious ones. We have a hand with a swastika ring holding a medal for swastika. We have the word award for careless talk. And the subtext, don't discuss troop movements, ship sailings, war equipment. And this is actually very similar to what you had for the last example. We had loose lips sink ships, or loose lips, the loose lips one. So firstly, again, think about which country this is meant for. It's a German ring, a German medal. People might think, oh, it's German. The post is in English. Just think about that. The poster is in English. So it's not meant for Germans. It's meant for English. So either the British, I'm guessing it's the Americans, but it could be either or. So the eyes immediately focus on the hand and the fingers going down towards the middle. All right, the way it's positioned, there's nothing in the background. It's just a hand and a middle. So your eyes are naturally drawn towards the lines which go towards the middle. The way it's placed in the middle is the main focus. And everything I'm saying, by the way, is what you should be writing down as an example of how to analyze. So What does this bring out? First, the colors, the hot orange or hot red color makes it kind of like a big warning color. So it makes us alert. When we see red, we tend to be in that kind of fight or flight mode. We're kind of being warned, like, what's going on here, what's wrong. So it's not a blue color. Blue is very natural and cool. Whereas red is quite aggressive, it's hostile. So there's a big warning there. The choice of colors also contrasts. The black contrasts with red. This is a design thing. So where you have the swastika, the Nazi flag. Red and white contrast very strongly. So we have a visual impact, same with text, a visual impact makes it stand out a lot more. Now the choice of the middle, this is the Iron Cross. This is used for soldiers on the Germans. And the idea is that if you talk about secret things like army movements, ship logs, equipment, like the last poster, no matter who you tell, somebody will find out. It will leak towards someone who is spying on America or spying on Britain. So if you talk about these things, you are a hero to the other side. Alright, so that's the focus. These elements, again, the hairy hand, the Nazi ring, and the German war medal, all these things are focal points and they give us a message. So the symbolism of the cross, the symbolism of the ring, as well as the text combined together to tell us that this is a warning for us to, or for the Americans at least, to not talk about things we shouldn't be talking about. Otherwise, the enemy will find out and you've betrayed your country. Lastly, we have consequence. So this is where a few of us are doing quite well, but we need to be a bit more detailed as to how we approach this. So in this case, this is a fairly easy poster. You've probably seen it somewhere before. It's that Uncle Sam saying, "I want you." Okay, and it's used, there's a World War one for Britain. This is the World War II one for the US. So, a couple of things here. Firstly, what is the message of the poster and what is it trying to achieve, and especially how? Now, we obviously know from this poster, it wants you to join the army. That's the most obvious thing. So it says so right there, not a hard thing to evaluate. But how does it achieve the message? So the steps I would recommend you take, evaluate how effective the poster is in sending the message. So combine the elements together. Think about the context and the content. What is it about this poster which actually encourages people? Why not have just the word "join the army"? Why have a cartoon of Uncle Sam pointing at you? So think about the thoughts and emotions which are evoked, and think about justifying this message using everything you've covered already. So why cover this? We know at this time World War II has started. We know America's been attacked, and we know there'll probably be a shortage of soldiers who weren't ready for war. The use of this particular character, Uncle Sam, Uncle Sam's like the American icon. It's like how these days we think of like the Statue of Liberty. I mean, they had it back then, of course, but in terms of patriotism, Uncle Sam is seen as like the representation of America. So by having America itself looking at you angrily and pointing straight at you, it challenges you. It kind of, because people get uncomfortable when people look at them or point at them. So imagine you're walking down the shops and you see like these posters, like 10 of these, and they're all pointing at you. So if you were an impressionable person who felt a bit of guilt that you've been attacked and you want to do something to avenge America, then having this person who's dressed as America that you know challenge you like this can evoke you to feel more patriotic, can make you feel like you can do something for the country, and therefore join the army, as the poster says. That's a description of a consequence, which again, that's what you should be doing in your analysis. Now, I'm going to go through one last thing with you, and that is an example of a full analysis. This is the whole thing. So, this is the poster we're looking at. Alright, that's appallingly racist. You might think that's a little racist, and you might be right here. So that is perhaps a little over the top, but hopefully this makes sense. Now, I'm going to go through a full write-up. So in your assessment, which you've done, you've got that table, but the final one has like a blank space for you to write in. So you have no guidance, and this is what you should be doing for a full mark. And I've actually missed a couple of things, funny enough. I just realized this. But for a full mark, this is the kind of thing you would need to write. So, work with me here. I know it's on the screen, but I'll go through it. So this poster was created after 1941. How do we know this? Because when the Japanese declared war on the United States, they bombed Pearl Harbor. At this time, there was strong anti-Japanese sentiment as they were now the enemy and had attacked America in a despicable manner. The main feature of the poster is the demonic cartoon of a Japanese person, a terrifying distortion of Japanese Prime Minister Hideji Tojo. I'm going to pause here. I'm going to actually show you. I won't show you right now, but look up Tojo, and you see this is actually not what he looks like, but when the Americans were illustrating Japanese people, they often used his face as a representation of all Japanese people. Okay, so he's like, you have Uncle Sam, who is the American. This is Tojo. It uses, I'll go back to the text, it incorporates his iconic circular glasses and squinty eyes. The round glasses were very popular in Japan at the time, and the squinty eyes is obviously racist. Obviously. It's a bit of a joke these days, but, not too long ago, it was obviously a racist attack against Asians, especially the Japanese. Now, the skin color is deliberately a dark shade of yellow, which represents the yellow fever racism against the Japanese. And again, with Asians, when they're shown in cartoons, they're often shown in a yellow tone. Not a white or pink tone, but a yellow tone. And they're making a dark yellow, almost like a tan color or khaki color, to make it look particularly like sick. So you're doing everything you can to be racist. His pointy features, notably his ears, teeth, fingernails, again, being attention to detail helps a lot. The fingernails are sharp too, and knife are intended to portray a vicious, evil enemy. The tiny hat, again, attention to detail, the tiny hat perhaps mocks the Japanese Empire. So you have the rising sun, it's a small hat, maybe making fun of the Japanese, but it's pointing at how small their country is. Next up, again, we'll keep on going, it's detailed. The phrase Tokyo Kitsei is a parody of American cartoons, intentionally playing with the Japanese capital city Tokyo. The text, much waste of material makes so happy. It's a stereotype of bad English spoken by the Japanese. The red text is meant to represent blood, as shown by the knife. The message of this poster is to strike fear into American citizens by showing them an image of their enemy using the stereotypical and racist features that identifies them as Japanese. The note on the poster implies that the Japanese enemy wants Americans to be wasteful of their resources, and by throwing away materials instead of reusing and recycling, they would be helping the Japanese win the war against the Americans. This betrayal would cost American lives and be as good as stabbing fellow Americans in the back as shown by the bloody dagger. And that is the complete analysis. So, when it comes to you doing your analysis, what you need to do eventually is to write this level of detail. Again, when you look at the assignment you had before, then you have a list of sources which you are illustrating in the tables in your assignment, and you also now have that giant picture at the bottom which has no questions. So that's the sort of thing you need to do. What we're challenging you to do is to put everything you know together. Try to understand what is happening at the time, what is on the poster, and what it's trying to show us. So that concludes my presentation. We finished on time, which is what we're trying to do. What I'll ask you to do, if you're following this live, is to have a go at the survey. All right. So the survey will go through how confident you feel. Going forward this week, we're going to be working through tomorrow and on Friday the assignment itself, so you have time to do it in class. I'm not going to force you to do it for homework because it's not really fair for you. So in class, we'll mostly focus on your assessment. So I'll be available, and what you will do is you will work on it. If you need some clarification, that's a chance for you to contact me in class, in Meet, or elsewhere, so that way you know what you're talking about and you have the best possible answer. I will update the assessment with a rubric later on, but hopefully that example on the slide is enough for you to work with. Anyway, I do hope you stay safe where you are. I'll sign for now, do the survey, and use time to have a bit of a relax, chill for a bit. Otherwise, feel free to head off, do what you need to do, and I'll catch you next time.